It'll go away sooner or later. All right. Good Wednesday evening to everybody. How the heck are you? Evening, morning, whatever it is, wherever you're at. Hello. How are you guys? I'm doing just great. Now, normally this would be where I would introduce Kyle or say that Kyle is coming, or we would futz around with all kinds of hilarious audio problems or what have you. But unfortunately, Kyle cannot be with us tonight. So it is just myself. But that's gonna give us a chance to do something a little unusual. Well, it's not that unusual. We've done deep dives on aspects of D&D before, and tonight we're going to dive into arguably one of the more controversial modules in Dungeons and Dragons history. Controversial because I think there's a lot of people who misinterpret it, who don't understand its purpose. They maybe kind of misconstrued what it is, what it's supposed to be. And of course, the title of the stream, or the subject line on the stream is a deep dive on S1, Tomb of Horrors. So without further ado, there we go. We have our collection of Tomb of Horrors modules. Now, the first thing you're going to note is right on the top, if you've never seen this before, if you don't own a copy of the Art and Arcana set, this is kind of the prize in the Cracker Jack box. The book itself is fantastic, but you also get this absolutely amazing little game product here. This is the original tournament module from 1975 of Tomb of Horrors, well prior to the published version from 1978 that I have both cover versions of right there. So we're going to look at that, and we're going to take a look at some differences between the pastel version and the four-color version that was released later in 1981. And this is just a little 3D print that I did some time ago. I can share the STL with you if you guys are interested. Yes, that is the demon face in dungeon terrain. I quite like it. It is both practical and decorative. Now, some people have said, hey, you should get Vanta Black paint and paint in the mouth and everything on it, which it would be a cool idea, except for a couple things. Vanta Black paint belongs to one artist. And he does not, he made a deal with the lab that made it. He bought exclusive rights to it, and he's an asshole. And the other thing is both Vanta Black, Black 2.0, and Black 3.0, which are also carbon nanotube black paints, have to be heated to 130 degrees Celsius to completely bond. So you get that absolute no light coming out blackness, and that would turn PLA or resin into soup. So unfortunately, yeah, if I spent the money on the Vanta Black paint, I would not be able to utilize it properly. But anyway, that's just a little something I knocked up on the 3D printer a couple of months ago, and I think it's pretty cool, so I thought I'd have it sitting out there. Now, before we dive into the modules, I just kind of want to catch you guys up. Tomorrow, two streams tomorrow. At 12:30, we will have Alan Hammock on the live stream. Alan is a TSR veteran, creator of such adventures as Ghost Tower of Inverness and S4 in the Dungeons of the Slave Lords. Those are a couple of his. And we're just going to catch up with him and see what he's been doing. I talked to Alan a few months ago. No, it was last year. It was last summer. I talked to Alan Hammock. And he will he'll be on the live stream, and we'll find out what's going on with him. TSR veteran, great guy, Alabama Crimson Tide fan, Roll Tide. So you might get stuck listening to me and Alan talk about Alabama football for a couple of minutes anyway. Hopefully it won't be too bad on some of you fans of lesser teams, or if you're just some weirdo who doesn't like college football. But anyway, tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, Jim Ward will be in the house. The Jim Ward will be here. We're gonna talk to Jim, see how Gary Con went, see what he's doing lately, talk to him about that auction, and find out when we're gonna see that that awesome deities and demigods go back up for sale again. Because I'm interested in it. I think you guys are. So you'll have that that original manuscript. So if you guys have got any question for Jim, or you got any question for Al, email me or put it in the chat, or just be here to talk to one of them. And then on Friday, TSR alum Skip Williams will be in the house at 12:30. And we're going to have a good time with Skip. We're going to find out what projects he's got going on now. We're going to talk to him about his life in the industry and so on. So yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. So we got 3 great guests coming up in 2 days. You don't want to miss those episodes. And then next week, Jeff Talanian, probably Alan Grohe. Now, Alan, what's interesting about Alan is I believe Alan helped. I could be wrong about this. I'll have to go back and check. But I want to say that Alan helped arrange things with Alan Lucian. I could be wrong about getting the Tomb of Ra-Hotep, which we're going to explore. It's in the Tomb of Horrors here. So we'll find out if he had any involvement on that. We'll talk to Alan next week. But Alan is also probably one of the most gifted minds when it comes to Greyhawk lore. And I'm very lucky to have Alan in my Monday night AD&D game, because Alan, like, I'll get stuck on something. You're going to the Principality of, the city is blah. It's to the west of Greyhawk. And Alan will just jump in and save my bacon. So he's kind of my one-man Greyhawk encyclopedia. So if you want to know Greyhawk stuff, if you have questions about Greyhawk, bring them next week, because Alan's going to be here. We just got to settle on a date. And it'll be an evening cast, by the way. We'll set something up special, or have him on with Kyle and I, or something like that. But it will be an evening cast, because Alan's a working man. Like he like has legitimate work that he does, unlike me. So that's who did I say? It's Jeff Talanian and Alan Grohe next week. And I'm trying. I don't want to make any promises about times. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna see if I can coerce Ty Beard to come on next week. But he will be back on the show. If it's not next week, it will be soon. Now let me tell you guys about this brilliant plan, this brilliant idea that I came up with. We had a really good couple of streams yesterday and the day before. One of the things that hit me was, as I'm getting a lot of people, a lot of new viewers, and that's very cool. I love that, by the way. That's an awesome thing. Welcome if you've come over because I have relentlessly hammered on the Clownfish TV videos about what's going on with TSR 3.0. Whether it's because I have talked a lot on Reddit about my live stream, or the RPG shite, or wherever. If you're new here, welcome aboard. But I have noticed that some of the folks who come on board maybe are not as familiar with first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I had a lot of questions about game playing in general, but also how do I get started? So what I'm proposing here, and if folks don't want to see this, well, I guess I'll be able to tell by looking at the metrics. What I'm thinking is, for the next little while on non-guest live streams, I am going to have classes, for lack of a better term, in learning how to play Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Both creating a character, running a character, and DMing a game. So, if you've never played before, whether you go out and get a PDF of Osric or used copies of the actual physical AD&D books, we're going to start doing that. Episodes that I don't have guests, I will impart what knowledge and help I can to you guys to help you learn how to play arguably the greatest version of Dungeons and Dragons ever written, first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Now let me see what Bo and Passerby have got going on. Good evening, Bo. Good to see you. Just a passerby. Good to see you too. My concurrent viewers have fallen down to 1 from a stream high of 3. So anyway, so that's what's going to be going. We're going to do the ultimate deep dive on first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. There will be other games also, as things kind of come in that I will be more than willing to talk to you about. But we are going to put on our heavy diving suits with the metal joints and the big thick Lexan helmet and dive as deep as we can and get straight into learning Advanced Dungeons and Dragons first edition. Back to 3 according to the metrics. Yeah, hello James. James Keck, who honors us by coming down from his observatory from time to time. Love your work in the field of astronomy, sir. But anyway, I don't think that's the real James Keck, to be honest. But I mean, a real James Keck, not the James Keck, or maybe you are the astronomer. I don't know. Anyway, enough of that silliness. On to other silliness. Let's talk S1, the Tomb of Horrors. Now, I'm going to tee up a misconception, and then I'm going to knock it off the green. Is that an appropriate thing? I don't know golf. I'm going to tee it up, and we're just gonna blast it down the fairway. We're gonna get it out of here. A lot of people think that Gary Gygax created Tomb of Horrors to punish playgroups that had characters. Oh, well, there's the answer. James Keck is the real Slim Shady. But that had characters that he thought were too powerful. Another misconception parallel to that is that when Gary would run Tomb of Horrors, that he would laugh and take players' character sheets from them and tear them up in front of them or something like that. Neither of those things are true. The final admonition to Monty Hall style games was in fact gods, demigods, and heroes. When TSR was being written to, called on the phone, approached in their offices and at conventions by players saying, yeah, we played for a year nonstop and I've got a 90th level paladin who has like Tiamat is his retainer. He made Tiamat be lawful good. He's got 1,000 land holdings in the campaign world. He's got an army of 10th level fighters, so on and etc. Generally, the response was, that's kind of interesting. Um, but the realization that there were a lot of people who prided themselves on play acumen, whether or not they actually had the play acumen, plus a couple of other things, the desire to create a fun and fulfilling challenge, and taking a page from Alan Lucian, drove Gary to create the tournament module, the Tomb of Horrors. In my research for this, I really should have tried to track down a couple of missives that were published in a War Games newsletter about people who got to play Tomb of Horrors and were struck by its very puzzly and not combat-oriented method, and that it took a long time to play. But when people would say, hey, I want to bring my 10th level, 12th level, 15th level character and play it in a game you're going to run, Gary would have Tomb of Horrors. In addition to being fun, Tomb of Horrors is intended as a challenge, not for characters. It is a challenge for players. There are ample modules, an ample number of modules, written by Gary and his contemporaries that are a challenge for characters, not really much of a challenge for players. I'm thinking of the Feast Hall in G1, Steading of the Hill Giant Chief. There's Nosnera, who has like some obscene amount of hit points and fights as like a titan or something insane like that. Attendant Hill Giants, his wife, her watch bear, ogres, the Hill Giant lieutenant. There is a large number of creatures in there. And if your party kicks that door open because they know they're tough enough to face them, the challenge is insert sword into monster, hope the dice go your way, and that they run out of hit points before you run out of hit points. That's the challenge of Tomb of Horrors. I'm sorry. That's not the challenge of Tomb of Horrors. You, the player, have to be thinking on your feet. With the exception of some saving throws, where applicable, because there are places in the Tomb of Horrors, we'll see, where saving throws won't save you. But there are a few places where lots of hit points and high saving throws will avail you. The majority of Tomb of Horrors can be summed up in, if you've had a good, and by good I mean very challenging dungeon master from the time when your character was low level until 10th through 14th, as on the cover of the 4-color version, and you've paid attention, and that DM has followed Gary's lead, as it were, in the Dungeon Master's Guide and in the way he composed some of his other modules, you're going to be thinking outside the box, that you're not just going to assume that the easiest and simplest thing in front of you is the easiest and simplest, has the easiest and simplest solution. You're going to be thinking abstractly, and you're going to consider every possibility. You're going to employ every caution as a player to overcome the module. It's not the Tomb of Flowers and Puppies. So it really is a graduation exercise. It is I would hesitate to call it the Kobayashi Maru, because it is a winnable scenario. It is an eminently winnable scenario. It is just very, very, very difficult and requires a lot of outside the box thinking. That is at the core of S1 Tomb of Horrors. It's not there to kill characters out of hand. Let me let you guys in on a little bit of a secret, particularly for, say, Bo Ganora. I know who's new, or if KDNH, if you watch this later. As a dungeon master, whether it's you or I'm referring to myself, it's laughably easy to kill characters of any level. I have at my disposal an arsenal of by the book, not even hand wavy things where I can just say, rocks fall, everybody dies, bolts out of the blue. By the book things I can unleash on characters in terms of cursed items, in terms of encounters, in terms of traps, and just snuff out a character of any level, first all the way through 20th. The trick is creating a challenge for the players that will punish them if they fail, but is absolutely able to be overcome if they apply abstract thinking. And Tomb of Horrors is the ultimate expression of that. So, we've set aside the notion that Tomb of Horrors was just created as a homicide module. I mean, it would be one sheet of paper, you know? It's like, tell the characters they're sleepy when they arrive at the Tomb of Horrors and they decide to set up camp. Then have Spheres of Annihilation roam through and touch all the characters. The end. See? That easy. It's that easy. That's how simple it is to slaughter a party in first edition AD&D. But that's not what we want to accomplish. We, as Dungeon Masters, that's not what we want to accomplish. This is the graduation exercise. So let's get into the Tomb of Horrors history a little bit. So you're saying there's a chance? Yes. Bo using the meme from Dumb and Dumber, which gets a lot of play on the Alabama football forum he and I are both on. But anyway, let's dive into a little bit of the history of Tomb of Horrors. First of all, Tracy Lesh and I have talked about this. Tracy was 14 when Gary asked him to illustrate the Tomb of Horrors. I'm going to show Tracy's illustration book, and then we'll take a look at Dave Sutherland and Trampier's illustration book. So first of all, here is Gary's hand-drawn map. There, that's it on the left. And we have the first illustration here. This represents one of the false entrances caving in. Now, all of these illustrations, Tracy Lesh had 28 days to do 14 full-page black and white pen and ink illustrations. Here's another false entrance. And this is the main entryway with the murals along the walls and so forth, and the mysterious floor tiles, which, if read carefully, will spell out a warning and a threat from Acererak itself. Gary and Tracy did have some drawing skills. I absolutely agree. This is a secret door in the entry hall. Sorry, I'm trying to watch 3 places at once. This is a mist-filled teleportation archway. And, of course, the infamous Great Devil Face. Oh, it looks a bit like Paul Mooney, doesn't it? the gargoyle, whose chamber you can break into from the hallway. This is an animated weapon trap that shows up later in the module. Near to it is a hallway, or rather is a gallery of murals. Each of those spheres actually covers a magical, or magically covers a mundane tunnel that you can use to find other locations in the dungeon. Three trapped treasure chests. That's the three trapped treasure chests and the gargoyle are a couple of the few martial encounters in the module. On the right of that image, let me bring that back in. On the right of that image is a special dual-wielding skeleton that is very difficult to defeat and impervious to turning. This is like 20 poisonous asps, and this is filled with poison darts, as I recall. On the other page, we have there is a Chapel of Evil, and that's a top-down view of the pews. A couple of them are trapped with poison gas. Here's a skeleton indicating an archway, and that is the crystalline altar. Hello, Damien X247. Ricky Meru says, I've run Tomb of Horrors twice. None of my players died until the end. Excellent. That's a good group of adventurers you've got there. Now, I particularly love this one. There is a fire pit trap. That, to be honest, you'd have to be kind of a shit player to fall for this trap. Because in the Tomb of Horrors, you find a set of double doors. If you listen at them, you can hear the sound of great merrymaking. If you break through the doors, the hall is like hundreds of feet long. You can see like a red glow from torches at the distance and feet running away down the hall. If you start walking down the hall, it starts slowly lowering, slowly tilting downwards. If you've played Portal, the very end of Portal, when GLaDOS is putting you into the fire pit, that's exactly what I thought of. Portal is basically the science fiction Tomb of Horrors, right? But yeah, you'd have to be some kind of an idiot to fall for that. And Tracy, of course, has an adventurer falling right down the slide in there, and even gives us a comic book as they get obliterated. These are some Egyptian-like vessels in a false tomb. Ricky says, the fire pit almost claimed one of my players. He managed to escape at the last second and forced the seesaw back. Yeah, you have to be almost to the end of it and like sliding, like deliberately just standing there not doing anything to not fall into the insta-kill fire pit. Like even towards the very end, you can slowly make your way back up. I don't know that it's supposed to counterweight backwards, but Ricky Murray, that's your call as a dungeon master, and I think it was a good one. Oh, I remember this one. This is a pit of spikes. There, you can see. This is the effect of an earthquake that happens in a room. The floor bounces up and down, and if the players grab onto curtains on the walls, the curtains turn into slimes and jellies and fall on them and will reduce them to rot and corruption. This is the room of fog that contains the Cyrene. That's the anti-gravity floor, where characters, if they touch the pillars, will drift towards the ceiling. Tracy really did a good job on the art here. Yeah, that's a good call, Ricky. The false Sazerac. And more attacking animated weapons. Shields and swords all. The absolutely evil and horrible. This is another one of those, I cannot believe that anyone would fall for this. That is the Wish Gem. The Gem of Evil Wish magic there. There is the throne where you find the scepter and the crown, which can be used to destroy a Sazerac. I know the encounter area for these stairs. I don't remember the specifics. Here are a couple of guardians, I think, to the main tomb. And not one of the best drawings in here. The skull of a Sazerac there with its gemstone eyes. Now, before we dive into the text of the module, I want to take a look at the appendix. This is the Tomb of Ra-Hotep by Alan Lucian, and I'm going to read the encounters, and then we're going to kind of compare them a bit. The Almighty Gem of Wishing was the best NPC in that dungeon for me. No, Ricky, don't worry about commenting, my friend. That's absolutely okay. So, as I said, Gary borrowed a page from the idea of a haunted crypt, and indeed there are a few Egyptian elements that make it into all versions of the Tomb of Horrors, from Alan Lucian. And so this is Alan's map here, and it's much smaller. This is a grand total of 17 encounters plus some notes about a couple of traps. So let's have a listen here. So we have Area 1, a secret trapdoor. Opening it breaks a seal, which releases an invisible stalker, which awaits before steps down. 2, pressure trapdoor, 100 feet, which opens, or 100 pounds, 100 pounds, which opens on a pit 50 foot deep with iron spikes at the bottom. See, that sounds terrible, 50-foot deep pit. But, you know, if you've got 10th or 11th level characters, fighting men, although for original D&D, you've only got 6-sided dice, so that could be lethal even to a high-level character. Area 3, pit as number 2 above, 10 foot deep, spikes poisoned. Remove spikes in bottom right, and secret trap opens on shaft 45 feet deep. Hey, we'll just disarm this thing! 4, spear traps fired when stepped on, 2 to 16 points of damage. It's a nasty spear there, Alan. Empty room with broken jars, chests, bones, and a few copper coins. Secret door comes down thus, and it indicates like that. 3 feet thick, crushes anyone in front in 6x3 pattern. Wow. Doesn't say save, doesn't say takes damage, crushes them. Now I crush you. Okay, passage turns into, this is number 6. Number 6. Passage turns into a crawl space, and 6 contains 5 to 20 cobras. Can't turn or run, crawl backwards away. Treasure is Ring of 3 Wishes / Delusion. Very hard to guess this one. And scroll of 7 cleric spells. Encounter area 7 as 5 but find and lift a ring of secret trap door, and it drops the lifter into a 20-foot deep. From there, crawl space goes to room. Triggers poison gas if save versus poison. If save versus poison, must leave. 8. Treasure of 10,000 copper, 8,000 silver, 6,000 electrum, 4,000 gold, 2,000 platinum, and 3 javelins of lightning. 60-foot range, 20-foot, 4 dice bolt when hits. 9. False burial chamber, obsidian vault, cedar sarcophagus. This is a little hard to read. With necklace of 12,500 gold piece gems. 12 500 gold piece gems. 3 potions of longevity. Scroll of animate dead. Various trappings. 2 statues. 1 has armor. And +2 of ancient design. Do nothing, weapons, clothing, etc. Invisible stalker generated by opening 3rd sarcophagus. Funerary boat and altar 3. 3 levers on altar. Pull iron and copper and brass. Crux anastas come. Iron equals touch and weakness for 1 to 7 days. Copper opens 12, but touch makes you feel very strange. Gold equals touch and feeble mind for 2 to 12 hours. All right, so number 10, passage from 3 dead ends. If secret door to 10 opened, 5 and 6 will fall into room as door swings open suddenly. Entire room is plastered and painted with murals. Secret door out to 11 is beside entrance, 8 feet to left and 25 feet up. Plaster must be chipped away to see secret door. Bo says, FYI, Bill, a stream like this is awesome to paint minis by working on a Vindicare assassin, so you get good and evil. AD&D and current day Warhammer. Let's see. So passage from 3 dead ends. Let's see. Swing suddenly. Plaster must be... Okay, so that we already did that one. Trigger. Drops 10-foot cube of stone at completely... Sealing off, only exit. No way to lift or move. 10-foot stone statue with mace is golem. If dotted line is crossed, it attacks. Only +3 weapons can hit it. Stone to flesh will not work. Rock to mud will. Takes 48 points of damage. Doors are solid bronze and openable only by key from Area 9. The burial chamber. Chains, tables, and usual clutter of utensils and personal gear. Walls lined with thousands of useless clay statues of Egyptian gods. Chariot is magical and flies if pulled by hippogriffs. Ashes and urns and scroll inside each to revivify. 14, 5 sarcophagus, 5 mummies, 1 with +3 axe. Same in, that's in 14. Same in 15 with a +3 mace. All wear scarabs of prevention of cleric's effects on undead, so they can't be turned away. Nice touch there, Alan. 16, Temple and Burial Vault of Ra-Hotep, now a Lich. 17th level cleric, 16th level magic user. See next page. 17, Gem Treasury. Secret door opens and illusion of smooth floor conceals pit. Sorry. This is all his handwriting, by the way. This is not like my lack of reading comprehension. Conceals pit from detection. Jade case, 5,000 gold piece value, 5 each. Aquamarines, periados, topaz, spinels, white pearls, 5,000 GP each. 1 each. Diamond, ruby, star sapphire, jacinth, emerald, black opal, oriental, amethyst, emerald topaz, star ruby, white sapphire, 15,000 gold pieces. That's quite the little haul of gems there that Mr. Lucian gave his players. So we have hieroglyphic inscriptions in certain areas, and he has all these explained out. And then a footnote under his explanations, he says, "For the sake of my sanity, I didn't actually write that message, but the whole looks pretty fair. Cruxanasta opens secret door, but gives disease fatal in 6 turns. Yuck." And then we come to the Lich himself. One, awakens when mummies come out, but 1 to 4 turn delay to open sarcophagus. Wearing a +3 ring of protection, has a staff of withering, 7 spells, 5th, 6th, 3 7th, an 8th, and a 9th, written on bandages, wrapping its body. That's a nice touch. Scrolls on its wrappings. Jackal stick in hand, which controls Sphere of Annihilation, antimatter non-magical globe of deadest black, 3-foot diameter. Anything which touches it is absolutely destroyed, but control is difficult. And then it gives, for each point of intelligence, 2% chance of control. For each level of magic user, 3% chance. Jackal staff adds it to intelligence 1% per point. So if you happen to lay your hands on that staff, you got a middling chance. Check sphere each turn of use. It will obey the controller unless score is above control percentage, i.e. 75% total control with a score of 76% equals no control. Moves 20 feet per turn, maximum of 45-degree turn. No control, drifts towards user at 10 feet per turn. Special case for sphere in base of sarcophagus, otherwise must control to move around. So that is the folio version of Tomb of Horrors and its progenitor, the Tomb of Rahotep. Fascinating stuff. Let's take a look at what got published. Now, I'm a fan of Tracy Lesch's artwork. I mean, I asked the guy to work with me on my module that I wrote under Gary's strict guidance, The Lost Crypt, which shares, I think, a little bit of lineage with Tomb of Horrors and the Tomb of Rahotep. But with that said, there is some beautiful art. Now let's take a look at these two. I'm going to move the mic over here a little bit. By the way, I just want to interject something before I dive right in here. During my last stream, my buddy Mike Holland said hello. He gave me a lovely shout out in the chat. I don't see chats in a timely fashion on the Facebook live stream. I didn't know Mike had said anything to me because his comments did not appear until today. If you say hi to me and I don't respond to you, it's because Facebook isn't showing me what you said. I always make it a point to say hello. So I see we have one viewer on the Facebook live chat. Hello to whoever that is. If you've made a comment on the Facebook live stream and I'm not answering your question and I'm not saying hi back to you, I apologize. It's not my fault. I would gladly say hello. So there we are. So let's go ahead and get to it. Tomb of Horrors, the pastel cover, and Tomb of Horrors with a 4-color cover. Now, I was lucky enough to stumble upon someone's Facebook sale a number of months ago of Return to the Tomb of Horrors by Bruce Cordell, which contained a facsimile of the original Tomb of Horrors pastel cover published by TSR. it did not have a box with it. But I wanted this. Return to the Tomb of Horrors for second edition AD&D I don't hate it. It's got nice maps, and it's got an illustration booklet and some other odds and ends that I could definitely use for other games. I don't think I would run Return just because it's a bit of an anticlimax, but this is really the prize that I wanted it for. So I picked this up. So to show you a bit of what it looked like, we are going long here, but you know what? It's Wednesday evening, so we can go long if we want. So this is what you got shrink wrapped from Zayre's or the Hobby Shop or under the Christmas tree or what have you, Toys R Us. And I will point out a couple of unique things with my copy. First of all, you will note there are 2 books. One is the module, but the illustration book is this one. When Wizards of the Coast released their Return to the Tomb of Horrors that included the repro, the illustration booklet was bound in the center. Hello, Elton. Was bound in the center of the adventure module. I took it onto myself to very carefully separate the two and use a large format stapler to reassemble them. And so I put staples on the spine so the illustration booklet is together separate, or is separate but held together as it should be thusly. So let's take a look at the illustrations in the Pastel Tomb of Horrors. So here are our false entryways first. Let me turn this here. I don't want to crease it or rip it. It's slightly lighter weight paper, I think, than when TSR released the module. So we have our 2 false entryways, and this is the true entryway. Again, its technical accuracy is good, but I think as far as artistic merit, that Tracy's work is of equal value. They certainly Dave Trampier didn't get into quite the whorls and spirals in the mosaic floor that Tracy did. And just as with Tracy's illustrations, we have the secret door from Dave Trampier. This is Dave Sutherland has did this illustration of the Misty Archway. That's a teleportation arch. And then, of course, to flip it back around the other way, we have probably one of the most iconic illustrations in all of Dungeons and Dragons art. We have Dave Trampier's Great Devil Face. And also, a vastly underrated piece, I think, is his gargoyle there. I don't know if they studied the artwork that Tracy had done originally, but these are beautiful pieces. I love the shadows thrown behind the gargoyle. I wish there was a good non-dungeon punk, like over the top, like it's got to, be like 25 feet tall compared to the characters. Miniature you could get of a 4-armed gargoyle just for future runnings of this. Now here's one where I think Tracy's drawing is the superior, which is not a knock on this. This is nice, but I think Tracy's illustration was superior. But this is the hidden doorways behind the spheres in the long gallery. We have the gargoyle statuette, which is a vital puzzle itself. Yeah, the art books, Russell, you're absolutely right. This, gosh, how many classic modules had illustration booklets? Tomb of Horrors. Um, of course, S3 Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. But I really think that's it, which is a crying shame. Honestly, I think there's a lot of modules that I look at and I'm like, we really could have done with a picture of what this is supposed to be. And this spear trap here, again, this is a Dave Sutherland illustration. I mean, the gargoyle's okay. This is a Dave Sutherland illustration. I like it okay. He just looks like he's like amused, like tickled by like, ho, a spear. I'm just going to keep going here. The 3 trapped chests. Now, Dave Trampier illustrated out each small drawing. And Dave Sutherland, you'll see in a second. So there's the chest by Sutherland. Trampier, I am not the kind of guy to get a tough guy tattoo. If I was like just some gearhead biker kind of guy, and I mean that in a positive way, I would totally get that on my arm. On my big flabby bicep, man. That would just look just have them all green and red and yellow like real snakes. I love that drawing of the snakes. There's the chest with the key in, but the poisoned magical bolts. And finally, we have David Sutherland's illustration here of the giant unturnable skeleton stuffed in the bottom of the chest. And yes, Russell, there is a lot of work in there. There was this project some years ago, Shrine of Orm, had this style, but as an animation. Neat. All right. This is the evil chapel that Tracy did a top-down illustration of. There's the skeleton in Tracy's, the crystal and altar, and the trapped but undetonated first pew that you see there. And this is what the skeleton is pointing at in Tracy's illustration. And as Ricky Maru was talking about earlier, this is the tilting sliding floor hallway trap, which again, if your party falls for that and gets wiped out, it's probably best that you all died there rather than get to later parts of the module. A very atmospheric piece. I mean, this shot really conveys, like this could have been, if you remember the old TV series from the 70s, Night Gallery, Serling's follow-up to Twilight Zone, but more horror-oriented. This drawing right here, this could have been on an episode of Night Gallery. It's that frigging creepy. I love it. But that is the Falsa Sazerac. Slightly less chaotic. See, I like the denser forest of spikes in Tracy's pit, because here it's like, okay, lower me down, and we'll just walk through, and then our thief will climb up and lower a rope in it. In fact, the last time I ran this module, the party did just that when they got there. When they got to that pit trap, they were just like, okay. Here's the body preparation room. Yes, Elton, these are from all of these are from the 70s. Tracy did his in 75, I think. 75, 76 for Tomb of Horrors. And then Dave Trampier and David C. Sutherland did these a couple of years later. Again, I think some of Tracy's were good enough that they could have gone in the final published version. And that's just kind of meh. But here are the curtains. When this room starts shaking, these are the curtains that if the characters grab, jellies will fall on them. They will turn to slimes and jellies and fall on them and consume them. If the party is dumb enough to camp in the Tomb of Horrors, there's a juggernaut. No, T1 to 4 is not the first place to have an animated juggernaut. This one will squash them dead. Here is the Siren, which Tracy's just got kind of a misty illustrated figure. It's a nice drawing, but the Siren is described as being just inhumanly beautiful. And she just looks like an angry housewife there. The throne with the scepter and the crown. The swords that will become animate. And this, again, just something straight out of Nightmare. I love the Wish Gemillo. Either Tracy's, which has the bodies just as preserved ash, like the figures at Pompeii, or this one. This, Sutherland stuff. Not Sutherland, Dave Trampier. If David had kept doing stuff, I would put him at his best in pen and ink up there with Bernie Wrightson. And if you guys are familiar with Wrightson's work, you know what a high praise that is. I think we're almost there. This is the eternal prison that you can wind up in. All those holes in the floor are... So characters... The fountain is eternal. It flows forever. Characters will have water, but there's no food. There's an anti-magic shell to stop them teleporting out. And there are all these holes in the floor, so you can't flood the place. The aforementioned staircase. Have I heard of a game called The Immortal? It was always about these kind of death traps. No, I have not. This is part of a Sararak's tomb. This is looking downwards towards the far end of that tomb. There's piles of treasure, dust, the ritual symbols on the wall, and then Dave Trampier's representation of the Sararak's skull. So there's the big illustration differences. Now, content-wise, we could be here for another 2 hours doing a line-by-line comparison, and I'm just not sure that you guys would want to stick around that long. But I do want to show you structurally. I'm going to set this one aside. I like my pastel copy. My custom pastel copy. So fall into some collector's hands one day and they'll be like, well, wait. Is this the reproduction? Or is this really a gemstone from the 1970s? I've created a mystery. So here's my workaday copy. Color cover. That's a fine illustration by Jeff D. Again, Jeff D's 4-color stuff that he did for some TSR modules look like they could be stills from an animation. Like, I want to see this movie. I want to see this 1970s fantasy cartoon movie. Don't you guys? Doesn't that look good? And then on the back, actually, Errol Otis got into the act. We have a little bit of Errol Otis action going on back there. A lovely illustration by Errol. There's the great devil face, the misty portal next to it, and it looks like a fellow with the torch there about to make the first and last mistake. So this is my work. Now, this copy did not have a separate illustration booklet. It had the illustrations in the middle, and I think it notes, the DM may carefully bend the staples outward and remove this section from the booklet. The staples should be bent back once the pages are removed. The pages can be folded down so only the appropriate illustration is shown to the players. The DM may place a finger or thumb over the number of each picture to avoid giving any clues, either to the number of the room or its location to the players. And we have a little bit of a, for lack of a better term, a cover illustration on the illustration booklet. Just some adventurers probing along the hills and would say, "Hey, I found it," looking for the real entrance. I can see that kind of animation being made on Blender nowadays. I tell you what, if you want to see some good 70s style fantasy animation that's being done today, go check out Gargonaut. Don't leave my stream. You stay put. You watch it after. But go look up Gorgonaut on YouTube and Exordium and just a whole bunch of other animations. This guy is making stuff that takes me right back to ads I'd see on TV or things promoted in the little, if you remember, like the half-height HBO booklets you'd get month to month, even if you didn't have cable, to try and tease you into getting it. But his is the kind of stuff that, like, as a kid and as an adult, but like as a kid, I just would have been slavering to see. So anyway, yeah, you get the illustration booklet in the middle. Now, functionally, Tomb of Horrors, the pastel version, and the 4-color version are identical. There are no trap differences. There are no differences with the NPCs. There are a few illustration differences. This one belonged to Mary Swanson. It even says right there, belonged to Mary Swanson. Hello, Mary. I have your copy of Tomb of Horrors. Actually, I don't have your copy of Tomb of Horrors because if you guys will note, at the top edge, the booklet sticks out. It's aligned properly at the bottom, but it sticks out at the top. This is a weird hybrid copy I made. I sold the best interior booklet and the best map to someone, and I kept the worst map, and it's just a little bit shelf worn, and the worst interior booklet because it has this person's name for a copy to have to use. So let me read you the notes for the Dungeon Master for this. Clever players will gather from a reading of the Legend of the Tomb. This dungeon, as clever players will gather from a reading of the Legend of the Tomb, this dungeon has more tricks and traps than it has monsters to fight. And then in caps, Gary notes, this is a thinking person's module, and if your group is a hack and slay gathering, they will be unhappy. In the latter case, it is better to skip the whole thing than come out and tell them that there are few monsters. It is this writer's belief that brainwork is good for all players, and they will certainly benefit from playing this module, for individual levels of skill will be improved by reasoning and experience. If you regularly pose problems to be solved by brains and not brawn, your players will find this module immediately to their liking. So Gary brings it up right there. This is a challenge to the mind of players. So let's go down. Let's I tell you what, we'll dive into this. We'll give it another little while, and then we'll see where we're at, and you guys can decide whether or not, or I'll ask you guys whether or not you want to press on through the whole thing, because we've been going for like an hour now. So false entrance tunnel. This is the key to the tomb. False entrance tunnel. The corridor is of plain stone, roughly worked, and it is dark and full of cobwebs. The roof 20 feet overhead is obscured by these hanging strands, so casual observation will not reveal that it is composed of badly fitting stones. Daylight will be sufficient to reveal that there is a pair of oaken doors at the end of the passageway. If the roof is prodded with any force, or if the doors are opened, the roof will further collapse. The roof of the tunnel will collapse and inflict 5 to 50, that's 5d10, hit points of damage upon each character inside of it with no saving throw. The doors open outwards by great iron ring poles. The cobwebs must be burned away to be able to inspect the tunnel ceiling. This area is illustrated by graphic number 1. So, on the left, false entrance tunnel. On the far right, a false entrance tunnel. This is another plain stone passageway, but the ceiling is only 10 feet high. Daylight will enable adventurers to dimly see what appear to be two separate doors at the end of the corridor. The floor paving at 50 feet distant within the passage will shift slightly when characters tread upon its surface. They will hear a rumbling from behind them, or beside them if some are at 30 feet within. At this instant, begin counting slowly to 10, about 1.5 seconds per count. So this would be 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, like that. And if you reach 10 before any player has reacted as noted below, the huge stone block, 10 feet thick, has slid shut and completely sealed off the passageway. The block cannot be moved or forced back. Trapped characters can escape only by the following means: disintegrate, phase door, stone to flesh, assuming they have a sufficient quantity of the block can be changed, transmute rock to mud. Players giving notice that the character is running out will be able to cover 1 foot of distance, 1 inch of movement rate for their character per count. Thus, a base movement of 6 means a character can cover 6 feet of distance in the space of a single count. Mentally note such characters' action, and when the 10 count is finished, compute where each character is. The block begins to slow movement so that at a count of 1, it is only a slight bit protrudes. At 2, it is 2 feet, a bit out into the corridor. At 3, it is 4 feet. At 4, it is 6. At 5, it is 9. At 6, it is 11. At 7, it is 13. At 8, it is 16. And at 9, the block 18 feet across. And at 10, it has slammed shut and crushed anything between it and the wall. Exception: an iron bar will stop the block, but only if the bar is placed on the floor where it will wedge the block. A bar elsewhere will bend and allow the block to come shut, but only 1 count will be gained as the bar bends. The door at the end of the door at the end of the passage are false ones. This area is illustrated by graphic number 2. And so we have the entrance to the Tomb of Horrors. Let's see. Even a bit of daylight entering through a crawl space or torch will reveal that this is an unusual tunnel. Bright, brilliant colors are to be seen everywhere. The stones and pigments undimmed by the passage of decades. Use illustration 3 now. The floor of the corridor is a colorful mosaic of stone with a distinct winding path of red tiles about 2 feet wide, the line snaking the way south down the corridor, easily visible to the onlooker. See special note regarding the pit traps at the end of this paragraph. No stonework can be seen on the walls or the ceiling 20 feet above, for some sort of cement or plaster has been smoothed over all of these surfaces and then illustrated. The scenes painted show fields with kine grazing, a corpse with several wolves in the background, slaves, human, orc, elven, and strange human-animal mixture, pig-human, ape-human, and dog-human, going about various tasks. Certain of the frescoes show rooms of some building, a library filled with many books and scrolls, a torture chamber, a wizard's workroom. See number 4 below for many details of this area. There are chairs, windows, boxes, bales, chests, birds, bats, spiders, and all manners of things shown on the walls. And then Gary goes on for the next 2 columns explaining the pits and so forth. But we come to the first puzzle. This is where your characters need to be paying attention. If the pattern on the floor has been carefully observed and studied from the entrance to this point, that's a point indicated on the map, the individual with such perseverance will be rewarded by suddenly understanding that a message is contained in a barely noticeable runes on the mosaic floor. It says, "A Sararak congratulates you on your powers of observation. So make of this whatever you wish, for you will be mine in the end, no matter what. Go back to the Tormentor or through the Arch, and the second great hall you'll discover. Shun green if you can, but night's good color is for those of great valor. If shades of red stand for blood, the wise will need not sacrifice aught but a loop of magical metal. You're well along your march. 2 pits along the way will be found to lead to a fortuitous fall, so check the wall. These keys and those are most important of all, and beware the trembling hands and what will maul. If you find the false, you find the true, and into the columned hall you'll come, and there the throne that's key and keyed. The iron men of visage grim do more than meets the viewer's eye. You've left and found my tomb, and now your soul will die. So all of those things pertain to traps within the Tomb of Horrors and puzzles that have to be solved. Right from the start, Gary is handing an obscure hint manual to players. If you have players whose sole drive is finding monsters to kill, they will miss this completely. And they will blunder through this module, wasting time and effort and missing obvious solutions. What I'm going to do here is, because it occurs to me, I could go on all night. So we've come up to the 3 chief encounters of the module. Let's take a look at the Tomb of Horrors from 1975, the Origins Tomb of Horrors, and see how it differs. Okay, so Area 1. False tunnel, which will collapse when the false door at the end is opened. Damage is 4 to 40 per person. So 4d10, not 5d10. Let's see. Tunnel 2, another false tunnel. When point X is stepped on, green wall section slides closed in 10 seconds. Only pass wall disintegrate. Wish. Rock to mud, stone to flesh, phase door, etc. will allow escape. So you can see immediately Gary got a lot more detailed and a lot more in depth on how that wall slams shut, what happens to people who stand there, and so on. So, yeah, I mean, it's very simple back in Origins. And I am entirely sure that Gary in his head or at the table may have done that. He just didn't outline it in his original MS. And then when he came to write a publishable module, or a module he thought was more saleable than this, then he came in and introduced all the various elements. So the real entrance to the tomb talks, it again describes the mosaic and so on and the pits with poison spikes. But down here under B, he just says, if the pattern of the floor has been carefully studied up to this point, it will reveal the following message. Go back to the walls. I'm sorry, this is really hard to read. That is like my sole knock on the Art and Arcana book. Really wish they printed clearer, more usable versions of this module. I get it that Gary's pages were faded. You guys could have cranked up the gamma a little bit. So go back to the walls or through the arch. Shun green, find black. Red could mean dead. 2 pits for this way will lead. Upon the throne, the key, and look closely for the statues of iron. So that's your only hints. So this, if Gary's flying directly off of this, when he's running this, and you happen to get the floor pattern hints, That's all you're getting. There's a lot more helpful stuff in there. So you begin to see that this Tomb of Horrors, which is... These pages are not numbered, but the actual module itself, I think, is 1, 2, 3... So yeah, the actual adventure module is 7 pages long. 7 pages of text in this. And in our handy-dandy green copy of S1, which most of us were acquainted with. Let's see. 6. And it's not counting the illustration pages. 12, so double the number of pages. Now, granted, that does include a page of character rosters, because yes, with this, you did get characters, pre-gens, to run. And let's look at this. So the first one, 14th level fighter. Second, 14th level cleric. Are you getting a handle on how powerful your characters had to be to run through this? 12th level paladin, 13th level ranger. We have an elf fighter magic user, 511. A dwarf fighter, level 9. But then right off the pitch, he has a strength of 18 by 91. We have a halfling thief, 11th level. A dwarven fighter thief, 7-8. A human cleric, level 9. A half-elf, what's this, fighter magic user, 5-6. An elven magic user thief, 7-9. A human 9th level magic user. An 8th level human fighter. An 8th level human cleric. A half-elf fighter thief, 5-6. Now this is odd. We have a human cleric 6th level. But I'm going to come back to that in a second. A 7th level human paladin. A gnome 4th level fighter, 5th level illusionist. A 6th level human fighter, strength 18 double nuts. And then we have a halfling fighter thief, 4-5. Now those last few might sound a little anemic for such a horrible module. And one other thing I wanted to take a look at too. Hit points. Do we have hit points? Strength, intelligence. So I think you'd have to dice for hit points for them. And then there's a lot of magic items also given. Character number 1, for example, the 14th level human magic user, has a displacer cloak, a ring of protection, a dagger +2, and a wand of magic missiles. Our human fighter, the second one, +3 plate mail, +3 shield, +3 mace. I'm sorry, that's cleric. And then our human 12th level paladin, +1 plate mail, +2 shield, +1 flaming sword, and a ring of fire resistance. And it just goes on like that. So you'll have to, players must roll for their own hit points. For all the traps, for all the dangers, for all the puzzles in Tomb of Horrors, I will tell you, as a dungeon master, if you are a good player, if you have paid attention, if your dungeon master has challenged you not just to roll the highest number and do the most damage, but has really made you think, and you've arrived at high enough level, a group of experienced players, not with their first characters, but people who have played Dungeons and Dragons with good DMing, because this is a test of good DMing. This is not just a test of good player acumen. It's a test of good DMing. And I'll get to that in a second. If you have paid attention over your years of playing D&D, you can take 6th and 7th level characters, enough of them, 8, 10. I wouldn't try it with, say, 3 or 4 5th or 6th level characters, but say 7 to 10 5th or 6th level characters and get through this module safely. You really can. You can cakewalk it. There are a couple of very tough fights that are going to be touch and go, and you're going to be using up a lot of healing powers. So I mentioned at the beginning that this is kind of like your graduate levels, your master thesis on I am a good D&D player, because it is also a master's thesis on I am a good dungeon master. Because now, if a DM takes this to a con and runs it in this day and age, this is like Casablanca. This is like Star Wars. It's like Citizen Kane. Okay? Luke blows up the Death Star. Rick puts her on the plane. Rosebud was a sled. Okay? Everybody knows these things. But if you're putting in a campaign and your group is really not metagaming, or maybe they just haven't played it before, if you've been a good DM and you've given your players the opportunities to expand their minds, and then you run Tomb of Horrors, maybe you've run some other classic trap and treasure puzzle dungeons to kind of whet their appetite. If you've done that properly, then your players are going to be ready for Tomb of Horrors. If all you've done is shove them through minion-filled convention centers full of goblins, everything from giant rats all the way through hill giants, and then you start doing things like putting hidden messages in murals and gargoyle statues that have a broken arm, and the arm's over there on the floor, and what do we do with it, and so on and etc. And your players try to brute force their way through it and they fail, the fault lies on you. So it is a test for dungeon masters and for players alike. One of the stupidest wastes of time I've ever engaged in on the internet, and I have engaged in a lot of stupid time wasters on the internet, is reading someone's whiny article, and I'm not going to go find it, but he basically says, complaining that once upon a time he went out and bought Tomb of Horrors when he was like 11 and brought it home, and all the players died and everybody got mad, or all the characters died, excuse me. I make that mistake a lot. The players all died. Oh, God. The characters all died, and there were hurt feelings involving a punch in the nose and everything like that. And so 40 years later, he's like, and that's why Tomb of Horrors is bad. That's like... I am reminded of this scene when, in The Simpsons, when Bart gets a fake driver's license and takes his friends around to do things that only adults can do. And of course it culminates in them renting a car and driving across country to Tennessee and getting trapped there, etc. Having to be shipped home by Homer. But they're like, well, what can we do with a fake ID? And they're like, we're going to go see an R-rated movie. And the movie they go see is David Lynch's Naked Lunch. And they come out and Nelson looks up at the sign and says, I can name 2 things wrong with that title. That's kind of what you're setting your players up for. And that's kind of what that whiny article was about. I can name 2 things wrong with with that title, you know, it's going to be a tomb of boredom if you're a poor dungeon master. It's going to be a tomb of boredom for your players, or a tomb of frustration. Now, if you're doing it for a laugh and you're just handing out high-level characters and they're getting killed in amusing ways, that's one thing. But if you're trying to insert this in your campaign, and you've DM'd strictly in the enter dungeon, insert sword into monster, take treasure and leave, without any consideration for puzzles, traps, riddles, so on and etc. Yeah, they're not going to find that to their liking. So the onus is on the DM as well as the players. The players must have paid attention. If you've thrown trap dungeon after trap dungeon at them and they haven't learned, they're just like, lol, Bill died, let's take Bill back to the village and have him raised up, and then they go back in, but now the trap's deactivated because, Bill stuck his head in it, and then they get the treasure and they move on. They don't think about what could we have done to have solved the trap, and they never engage in such things. Then they're going to have a hard time. You can give a group of 6 players 2 14th level characters apiece, and if they don't pay attention, you'll kill them all characters. You'll kill the characters all in the space of a few encounters in Tomb of Horrors. Conversely, go back to my example of 7 or 8 skilled Dungeons and Dragons players with a skilled dungeon master. Everybody takes a 6th or 7th level character, and they're walking out, possibly carrying some wounded with them, but with everything that they came for. That's what Tomb of Horrors is. It is a masterclass in thinking logically through puzzles and in quality DMing. So I will open the floor up for any questions or comments or criticisms. If you're over on Facebook and you've typed a question and I'm not seeing it, try it again. Again, my friend Mike commented on my video either on Thursday or Friday, and I missed it completely, so I apologize for that. Let's see. Russell says, ooh, a real treat. I've never seen that. Yeah, you got to get yourself a copy of Art and Arcana, the deluxe edition, the big 50-pound heavy black box, to get Tomb of Horrors. Now, your copy won't come with an autographed Tracy Lesh copy of the module, but all other things being the same, yes, you do get that. Much of S1, powerful characters don't really mean that much. No, they don't. I think I am of the opinion that the right selection of clerical and magic user, and possibly illusionist and maybe druidical spells, could mean the difference. Across the eons of your DMing, what trap has had the biggest body count? Interestingly enough, a lot of people say, oh, it's the Sphere of Annihilation, or it's the room with the swords and stuff that will eventually beat you down, or the jellies on the wall. For me, it came in the Evil Chapel, because if the altar is touched a certain number of times, it throws an incredibly dangerous bolt of lightning straight down the middle of the chapel and kills. I killed 2 characters and wounded the rest of the players badly enough that they retired from the dungeon right then. They did not seek further adventure against Sazerac. Now, another group I ran was fooled by the false Sazerac and tried to teleport out. Sazerac, being quite the comedian, sent them somewhere else. they teleported out at night. And I just said, you look up in the sky, you see the twin moons, you're in a forest somewhere. And they're like, oh, okay. I said, there's a city, a big, huge city. You can see the lights of it. It's, it's perhaps 2 or 3 miles away in a low valley. And they're like, oh, well, the air is kind of crisp and cold. Well, we must be in, perhaps we're in Radek, or we're, in the Pale or someplace like that. And this is clearly Greyhawk. And they left. And that's where we wrapped up, because it wasn't. I gave them pre-gens out of the module. Sararak sent them across time and space, and they were on Tamriel from the Elder Scrolls games. 2 moons, just like Greyhawk. But we never explored it any further. They had other characters to run, and we played in the campaign, the regular campaign. But if they had started asking me questions, I might have given them hints. So I said, okay, well, you start marching to the city, and it's almost 1:30 in the morning. Do you guys want to keep going? No. So yeah, it was actually the altar in the evil chapel. Nobody has ever screwed with a wish gem. And there's so many things. Like, it's either detect evil or detect magic. I want to look at this. I'll spoil this a little bit for you guys. The Sphere of Annihilation, that damn Sphere of Annihilation that everybody seems willing to kill themselves in. Arch of Mist. Okay. The other fork of the path leads right up to an evil-appearing devil face set in mosaic at the corridor's end. Show your player's graphic number 6. The face has a huge O of a mouth that is dead black. The whole area radiates evil and magic, if detected for. The mouth opening is similar to a fixed Sphere of Annihilation, but is about 3 feet in diameter. Plenty of room for those who wish to leap in and be completely and forever destroyed. Listen to that. It radiates evil and magic if detected for. I'm in a place called the Tomb of Horrors. I'm coming up to this. Wham. Let's not go in there, or at the very least, let's take the 10-foot pole. Put the 10-foot pole in. Withdraw the 10-foot pole. It's now a 4-foot pole. Don't go in there. Another one. Let's see. And another one. False Crypt. Oaken Door. I want to find the... here's what I was talking about. The opalescent blue altar. Okay. The block of strange material glows with an inner light. A very faint evil can be detected 2 and 6 per round of detection. If the thing is touched by living matter, it will send a lightning bolt 40 feet long and 8 feet wide, shooting up the aisle. Base 40 hit points of damage. Save versus magic reduces the hit points to 20. After this, the bolt streaks forth. The altar turns a fiery blue-red, and if it is touched, it will explode with a base of 60 to all creatures in a 30-foot radius. Save reduces to half. So yeah, that's what got the most characters in one go. I want to find... the gem. Because I want to, again, explain something about the Tomb of Horrors that people need to understand about. Oh, it's just a killer dungeon. It's just a way for Gygax to kill player characters. Again, there's 3 lethal traps. Well, 1 lethal, 1 potentially lethal. They're eminently avoidable by conscientious players. People who think with the pointy end of their swords, they're not going to get that. Pillared throne room. Okay, here we go. This is over on page 8. Charred remains. Cinders, ashes, and charred bones and skulls, the crisped and blackened remains of clothing and gear, arms, and armor. A thoroughly awful and frightening sight encircling a huge glowing orange gem. Display illustration 25. If evil magic is detected the gem will send out pulses of wickedness and a strong aura of Dwemer, so strong that the detecting character will get the vague feeling that the magic is connected with. The gem is a cursed wish magic item, and no matter what is desired by the character daring to touch it and wish, a reverse or perversion will bring doom to that character and all named in the wish immediately after, causing the evil wish to transpire. The gem begins to pulse with reddish lights, growing progressively stronger, brighter, and hotter. Count to 10 as usual. Gary's got the Dungeon Master doing a lot of that. The stone then explodes, absolutely killing any character within a 15-foot radius with a wave of searing radiation and flames. The gem remains as a noisome mass of stinking purplish mold which bubbles and chuckles. In 1 week, the mass will reform as a glowing orange gem. Why would you ever? Here is what literally looks like the site of a nuclear accident. It's as horrifying as anything you would find inside Reactor Room 3 at Chernobyl. Why would you touch it? A greedy player would just snatch it up and employ a wish. Why would you touch this? Let me see if I can find the sliding room. Forsaken prison, secret doors, three-armed statue. There's nothing in here. Okay, here we go. Locked oaken door. The gate is heavily bound with iron bands, and there are several locks apparent. If a character listens with an ear to the door, he or she will hear far-off music and happy singing, obviously coming from somewhere beyond. The door radiates a dim magical aura, and no force or knocking spell will open it. A disintegrate spell or physically chopping into pieces provide the only means to continue past it. Once the door is destroyed, the sounds of confusion and running away can be heard from the north. All music and singing has ceased. There is a faint glow, torchlight, northwards. The walls of the passage are smooth with alabaster, and the floor is a very smooth, highly polished smoke gray marble. The destruction of the door triggered an audible glamour spell to produce the noise heard. The tunnel floor is a counterweighted beam. So earlier when who was it? When Ricky Maru said that his team ran backwards and tilted it. That is exactly right. There is no question. You did it exactly right. A counterweighted beam. Its overbalancing point is the third square from the door, and when one or more characters step through, the floor will begin to tilt downward towards the north, with the north end slowly sinking. At this moment, show your player's graphic 16. That is the hallway tipping. On the far right, you can just see flames. Quickly state that the floor is beginning to slant as explained above. Begin counting slowly, as per number 2 above, to 5. All characters still north of the doorway at the conclusion of the 5 count will fall and begin sliding to the north at 10 feet per segment. When the 40-foot point is marked, each will take 1 to 6 hit points of heat damage, 2 to 12 at 50, and thereafter they are plunged into a pit of flames and molten lava, which will absolutely snuff them out. Retreat from the area during the count at the rate of 1 inch for 1 foot of base movement rate per count. You have an absolute chance to save yourself. There are so many deadly traps in this module that thinking players will be able to avoid and not die at, that it literally beggars belief that people think that this is a no-win, kill all the characters module. It is an absolutely winnable, but kill dumb characters module. So my advice to you, in closing, is if you want to run Tomb of Horrors, if you think you've got the chops to run Tomb of Horrors, read that module backwards and forward. Understand every room and how it interacts with the previous room, because so many of them do. It's not just a random collection of traps. It is interlocking and exceptionally well thought out. It is, like I said, it is pretty much your graduate thesis as a player to say, I am an expert Advanced Dungeons & Dragons player because rooms 1 through 30 of Tomb of Horrors. And as a dungeon master, you can say, I am an expert Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st Edition DM because my players got to this module and they had the player experience to pass it. It absolutely fits into the world of Greyhawk. You can fit it into a home scenario. You can fit it into Dragonlance or Forgotten Realms. Be careful with Forgotten Realms, because God knows Elminster could show up and just show the characters how to beat it. Might be a little difficult for Dark Sun. I don't know about any of the other ones, Maztica, or I guess Al-Qadim. It could fit in. It might fit pretty well in Al-Qadim. So get yourself some Tomb of Horrors today if you think you got it. And sort of correlating to that, for those of you who came in later, who didn't start watching the stream from the beginning, or didn't go back and start the stream at the beginning, and you might not be aware of this, going forward for a good stretch of time, I'm going to devote live streams to lessons in playing 1st Edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, both mechanics and playstyle that I found successful. If you've listened to me run my mouth, whether you came from, seeing my pleas for more subs on Facebook, on Reddit, on the OSR and AD&D subreddits, or you've been with me a long time, I am going to be running a boot camp, if you will, in how to play 1st Edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, because I know there's a lot of you who did come from those places who don't have a background in playing it. Maybe you're a little younger. Maybe your first D&D was 3rd edition, Hey, here's a hot shot for you. 3rd edition came out 21 years ago. I remember, because it doesn't seem like it was long ago, when Dungeons & Dragons was celebrating its 20th anniversary. The whole hobby of D&D was celebrating its 20th anniversary. I remember when AD&D was celebrating its 20th anniversary. That wasn't that long ago. But maybe you kind of came in a little bit late. And you've heard me talk. You've seen me talk about these cool modules and do the deep dives. I'm going to start doing that. There will be some days when I do other things. But it will be a metered number of classes, and we will go through the player's handbook. We will start with a player's perspective, because the Dungeon Master's perspective is a bit deeper. We'll cover character generation, requirements for all the classes, the whys of the requirements of all those classes, which will go into the history of Dungeons & Dragons a bit. Generate characters for each class. Yes, for each class. Now, Kyle will tell you, my co-host Kyle, who couldn't be with us tonight, will tell you that, hey, just take a bunch of 10s and run with that. We're going to be generating characters for each class. And then that way we can get into things like explanation of spells and powers and so on. Things that you can't get out of Adequate the Fighter, who has 10s and everything. Because unlike Kyle's view of Dungeons and Dragons, there are some slightly high-powered things you can do with it, and I think they're fun to start out with. Not just be a magic user who spends 6 levels throwing pots of flaming oil, and then one day decides to steal scrolls from someone and start using those. Little gig at Kyle. But that's what we'll do. School will be in session, and we will learn how to play first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And I hope you guys have joined me on that journey. I hope that those won't wind up being dead live streams that nobody really hangs around on. But, because again, people ask me, like, where do I start? How can I get this? I will not be referring a lot to Osric. If you're following along with Osric, if you ask me a question that pertains, like, okay, you're talking about the player's handbook, where can I find this in Osric? I'll have a PDF of Osric and try and steer you in the right places, but we'll be focusing predominantly on the AD&D core rule books from TSR from back in the day. So that's what we're going to do. At the end of that, will you be able to say, okay, yeah, now I can run Tomb of Horrors? That's up to you. I'll tell you a little story. I know people who, God bless them, have played Dungeons and Dragons for years and years and years and years. And they're okay players. And they'll tell you without pause, yeah, but I couldn't run a D&D game. And I've teased my players on Monday night. So one of you guys is going to have to run this sooner or later. And there's some of them that might step up one day and do it. Might just say, okay, Bill, put your money where your mouth is. 4d6 in order. And, that maybe that'll happen one day. But at the same time, my friend Stacy LeWare, I was lamenting the fact that I never got to play. So for my birthday, Stacy, whose only experience playing Dungeons and Dragons was first edition AD&D at my table for about 18 months on 2 separate occasions, once for about 4 sessions and once just for one big session, ran phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal AD&D games. So it's like that thing in the Ratatouille movie, a great DM, to paraphrase, a great DM can arise from anywhere. So you might, after listening to this, say, I really want to do that. I've got a group. We've been looking for something to play, or I have friends who want to play some D&D. You can play the D&D of Stranger Things and Community and Freaks and Geeks and the Goldbergs and E.T. the Extraterrestrial with the skills that I will hopefully be able to pass on to you guys. So be ready for that. Man, we have been going almost 2 hours, so I'm going to wrap this up here shortly. Does anybody have any questions for me before we finish this up? If you're over on Facebook and you've been watching on Facebook and you've typed in stuff and it's not showing up or I'm not reading it out loud, I swear to God, I'm not ignoring you. So if you have questions and I see them later, I will address them in another live stream. I promise I will. But you guys over on YouTube, your stuff tends to come through pretty quick. So let's give it, say, 10 minutes. I'll open up the floor for 10 minutes to any questions you guys have. And while you're typing your questions or thinking about things to ask me, or we're just waiting for the next 10 minutes to wind down, let's take a look. I feel like I'm on a telethon. What are we at currently? So currently still sitting at 716 viewers, or 716 subs. When I hit 1,000 subs, I will hold the inaugural DelverCon. Oh, that's something else I wanted to mention tonight because I'm going to be busy the next 2 days and 3 streams with guests. Yes, I did set up a Discord. There's a Delver's Dungeon Discord. Now, I don't know how to like share that out with people so it's just not out there in the public. And like I get drive-by trolls and stuff. So if anyone has got any comments or questions on how to do that, let me know. Because I've got it set up on Discord. There's an official Delver's Dungeon Discord now. So yeah, just any questions you guys have got it all. And we'll answer that. I almost forgot. Speaking of guests, not next week, but the week after, we'll have Matt Finch, Swords and Wizardry creator, Frog God Games, not the CMFIC over at Frog God Games, but certainly one of the one of the big wigs over yonder at Frog God Games, and a good guy, a swell guy, a great guy. That's why I was able to buy groceries a couple of times. Not just like here's some money, Bill, but like taking on the Lost Crypt project and saying, yeah, we'll publish that, when he very easily could have said, I don't know, man, that's, Gail might get mad about that. Gail Gygax might get mad about that. So, great dude. Fantastic dude. He'd be a fantastic dude if I hadn't worked for him. He'd still be a fantastic dude. So Matt will be here in a couple of weeks. So that'll be fun. Any questions? Anyone at all? Anyone at all? I will wait another 8 minutes. That's a 2-hour live stream today. So that 2-hour live stream got at least an hour tomorrow. Maybe at most an hour, but at least an hour with Alan Hammock tomorrow. And then tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock, Jim Ward. And who knows how long Jim and I are going to sit and run our mouths. And then Friday, Skip Williams at 12:30. So that's going to be awesome. Russell says, it's almost obligatory. Honey, we came this way. Everyone walks through it. Yeah. Tomb of Horrors. The Sphere of Annihilation in the Tomb of Horrors. I didn't drag you kids halfway across the country in this station wagon for a week's drive to not walk through the Sphere of Annihilation. Of course, the other approach to Sphere of Annihilation for the truly discerning characters is to show up with a small army of engineers and peel the top of that hill off and start just like treat it like a giant archaeological dig, just looking down in the pit. Oh, that looks like that could have been dangerous. Let me just cast transmute rock to mud and fill that pit in. Now, dispel magic. Okay, you should be safe. Everything should be safe now. Yes, just take your engineers right across that. Oh, there's a gargoyle. Let me just I'll levitate him. Just levitate him into the air and move him out into the swamp and drop him into the water. You'll be fine. Bo's like, the fun doesn't start till hour 3. Yeah, no, I'm not running a 3-hour live stream tonight. I got to save something in my voice so I can talk to Alan and Jim Ward tomorrow. But yeah, you just do a giant archaeological dig on the Tomb of Horrors. You bring sledges and sows and screws and that sort of thing. Okay, everybody, see that room? That room right there. That's very dangerous. That's very, very dangerous. You're gonna have to step back. Let's don't go in there. And you just I don't know, cast Move Earth and just collapse the walls of the thing. On a Scissorax skull. That would be a very scintillating session. What would be a scintillating session, Russell? I'm not following you. The archaeological dig approach to solving Tomb of Horrors. I think that would be hilarious. You've got a force of arms, a force of men at arms big enough to keep monsters from harrying the party, and you're just you're disintegrating disintegrating off tops, move earth, disintegrate, transmute rock to mud, to just treat it like a super fun cleanup. Yes. Just start just pump gunite in. Just piss a Scissorak off. Yeah, you went through a lot here. I got a couple of contractors from New Jersey who bid on this. Who just drill holes in and just pump the entire place full of gunite. That's how we solve the Tomb of Horrors. For those of you who don't know, gunite is not a giant robot in a Japanese cartoon, but it's basically it's gelatinized liquid grout that you pump under high pressure. Like, you can pump it under a house's foundation to stabilize a house, or fill in a roadway, fill in a sinkhole with it. It's just concrete under pressure. Use hoses, but yeah, just just summon up a few tanks of gunite and just fill the entire tomb. Might piss the siren off. You rescue her. Hey, there's a foggy bit over here, sir. All right, gust of wind, blow the idiocy fog away. Throw her down a rope of climbing, pull her up out. Good to meet you, ma'am. How are you? Don't worry, we'll have you to safety here shortly. So we just got a few more minutes. So any questions, you guys don't hesitate to ask. Anything about Tomb of Horrors? Anything about the upcoming AD&D master classes? Anything you want me to ask Jim Ward if you're not going to be here tomorrow? If you want to ask Jim Ward or Alan Hammock questions, you feel free to ask me now, and let's see, Flex Seal. That's a lot of damage. Pap. Yeah, get the Flex Seal guy and Jontron on the Tomb of Horrors. They'll have that. They'll just what they'll do is they'll stand back and spray a Scissorak's jeweled skull in Flex Seal so he can't see anything. He's just bumping around the room looking for characters to drain. Homework before the first class. Your homework before the first class is to get yourself copies of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, at least the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide. Whether you just buy the PDFs for $9 or whether you go whole hog and get printed copies, that's your homework. If you don't have those things, if you come around and you don't have them, I'm not going to bust chops. It's just going to be a little easier to follow along. Because my camera setup here, I'm not exactly equipped, as it were, to have pages. Although, yeah, I can have the PDFs on screen too, so you guys can kind of follow along. I mean, it's not like it's not like A, I'm gonna show the whole book, and B, you're gonna I'll screen grab this and have the whole book. So yeah, that's what we'll do. Guys, it has been an absolute blast today. I hope, Russell says, I assume the Demi-Lich was created for the tomb, but was it? It is the first appearance of a Demi-Lich that I am aware of. And he's just a Lich in Tomb of Rahotep. Not that he's not powerful enough, but yeah, a Sararak has, as far as I know, marked the first appearance of the Demi-Lich. Now, the Demi-Lich, as explained in Monster Manual 2, which I should have had a PDF for Monster Manual 2, they behave a little differently. They can do all the stuff in the module. They're destroyed a little bit easier. And then they have this thing called a death scream that they can issue that can kill characters at a certain radius, I think. But yeah, as far as I know, the Demi-Lich was first in the Tomb of Horrors, and a Sazerac was the first one, or a Sararak. I use those interchangeably because Gary did sometimes when we would discuss Tomb of Horrors, he would say a Sazerac, and other times he would say a Sararak. Written down, it's a Sararak. Just my brain just goes back sometimes to thinking about how Gary would pronounce it. So, everyone, I've had a lot of fun today. I hope you guys had a lot of fun too. I will see you all tomorrow at 12:30. Be here. Al Hammock will be present. We will get to talk to a TSR great and discuss his old stuff, new stuff, what he's done in between. Is he going to be at a con? What have you. So we'll see him tomorrow. And then tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard U.S., we will have the great Jim Ward. So we got the great Alan Hammock, the great Jim Ward, and the great Skip Williams. All like that. I will attach the great to all of my guests because I tend to think they're great people. So, peace to you all. Love you all. Thank you for stopping by. And I will see you later. Bye-bye.